Well, the same thing that brought me in the party forced me to leave it eventually. Before I joined the party, as a kid, there was something about me that I can only describe as a faint type of radical humanism. The humanism was evident. I always wanted to help certain people, okay? That's easy. The radical part wasn't political. I was a radical kid. I really was impatient. I don't know how else to put it. I knew that this thing was basically wrong, but I was very far from understanding until I read a great deal of Marx and Engels in particular, who wrote a lot of stupid, fucked up things, but they wrote some basic truths also. Some of them so valid. So this is what guided me, and the only thing that resembled radical humanism in the 30s was the Communist Party. Nobody talked about racism. Nobody. Nobody talked about the class struggle. Neither party. Nobody. Nobody did shit about the evictions. Nobody was doing nothing, except along came a Roosevelt who had a vision. He was still one of them, but he had a vision that this course that we were on was no good for his world. So until he came along, that's the way it was. So I joined the only organization available. I liked the idea of them defending the Scottsboro Boys and, you know, organizing people in the Deep South. That made sense. They were telling me why people eat out of fucking garbage cans. And they were right, okay? But when the evidence began to pile up in the 50s, at first I rejected it. I didn't want to believe it, that the Soviet state was no longer radical, and it was far from being humanist. And I resisted. And when the evidence began to come in, I even said to myself, the idea itself is so beautiful that it'll overcome this. The bad, the wounds, the ulcers, they were there. And in '55, I was corresponding with two famous Soviet writers. I think one was a playwright and one was a other kind of writer. Itzhak Pfeffer, ring a bell, was one of them. They were heroes of the Soviet Union. They were decorated in the Great War, right? And suddenly I'm not getting any letters. 1955. I write and nobody answers. So a leading Jewish communist in America, he was the head of a Jewish communist newspaper called the Freiheit, is going to Moscow. So I say, I want you to look up Itzhak Pfeffer. Tell me what happened. I'll do that for you. Comes back, I can't tell you. What do you mean you can't tell me? Well, if you had family in Moscow, which I do, he said, you wouldn't be talking either. So I said, they're dead. And he didn't say no, he just didn't look me in the eye. And I learned the story. One of them got busted, the other one went to the police station to find out what happened. He disappeared too. It was a period of extreme anti-Semitism, that period, 50s. You know, that and then the Hungarian thing, the uprising. I knew that if I were Hungarian, I would have taken up arms against the Red Army. What does that mean for a communist? The end of the dream, man. That was it. And then I learned that this is not true just of the Soviet Union. I saw it in Nicaragua. I saw it a little bit in the civil rights movement. That revolutionaries are always better people before the revolution. It's easy to be moral. You can't steal because there's very little you got access to. It's when it's there for you to take, whether it's power or money or whatever, that's the real test. And you're both educated guys. Give me a revolution where they passed that test. I didn't see it, not the Sandinistas. And they were young, beautiful guys, risking their lives. They didn't have to do it. They were middle-class kids, well-educated. They had a life. And they put their ass on the line. And they took power. And look at fucking Daniel Ortega today. He's a piece of shit. But he's a predictable piece of shit. I knew that when I was in Nicaragua. Because I had dinner with him and a couple of people. And they were shit. We sat in an air-conditioned house that used to belong to the bourgeoisie, served by a maid, cooked by another person, a chauffeur to take their fucking kids in an air-conditioned little bus to a special school. There was a special store where they could go shopping called the Dollar Store, which also existed in Moscow when I was there in 75, right? They were living off the hog of the land. I mean, really. It is also true they were trying to do something for the common people. It's true. They introduced some health clinics, they did some schools. That they did. Because nobody else had ever done anything like that. But they were living pretty good. They had something to defend. And now, have you read his recent shit? He's running for president on a ticket that's slightly right of center. I am not shocked. I met that prick. Not my buddy. I smell those bastards.